Good afternoon. Welcome to yet another BW Dialogue. Today we are talking to a friend of India, a friend of Indian businesses, a bridge between India and Japan. Let me welcome my guest, Mr. Paul Dupuis, to the show. Thank you, Paul.
Great to see you.
It's good to chat with you again. Welcome back to India, though for a short while.
Well,
Paul, the
thank
difference
you.
between your last visit and current visit is last time you were the chairman of a large Japanese company, but now you're an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Last 3.5, 4 months you've been an entrepreneur.
It's been a journey.
Welcome to the entrepreneurship
Welcome
club.
to your club.
Well, how did you think of turning an entrepreneur? You were right at the top, growing, heading a very large business. Everything was going for you, and suddenly you decided to chuck all of it away and become an entrepreneur.
Well, the first question I get asked is actually not how, but why. I get asked that question, why? And to your point, Anurag, thank you. I had a wonderful 4 years in India. It was game-changing for me. 2017 to 21, leading through aggressive growth, turnaround of our operations in India, and then, of course, through COVID, which was, as we know, we went through it together, one of the toughest times, certainly, of our lives. Then I went back to Japan and took on the role of CEO and chairman of Randstad in Japan, one of the largest, fastest growing countries in the world of Randstad, and we were a top performer. Then I came to the fork in the road, and I was at a stage in my life where I was hungry to go out to the bigger world. You know, being part of one organization, you can make an impact within that frame, and I was able to do that. But I was really eager to kind of go out to the bigger world and make a larger impact, take the learnings that I had here in India and in Japan, and bring it to other organizations. So effective February 1st, I left behind the big corporate world and I started my consulting company.
Welcome to the Entrepreneurship Club. Now, tell us a bit about the nature of your consulting company. What's keeping you busy? I believe you're on the board of a large Japanese conglomerate. You're an advisor to a consulting company. You are on your book promotion tour. You're doing trainings based on your book. You're doing consulting for companies in the headhunting and staffing space to scale up. Tell me a bit about the kind of work you're doing as an entrepreneur.
Sure. Well, I would frame it like a pie, how we spend our time, right? And when I was in the big corporate role as a CEO of a large, complex organization in India with 65,000 people, in Japan, 35,000, 95 offices, your pie is basically dominated by that role. The other piece of the pie, which is a small piece, is family, of course, fitness, and other things, hobbies and so on. When I let that go, I suddenly had the opportunity to reinvent the pie. So as you said, I'm sitting on a board of a very respected Japanese company with a 121-year history. It's fragrance and flavoring company. It's a really interesting industry. And of course, they're growing globally. So I'm going to help them grow and maybe one day even be in India. Let's see. In addition, writing my second book, as you said, I really enjoyed writing my first book. And by the way, the first book, you helped me release here in India. Wonderful, wonderful experience. And then just last fall, I was able to release the Japanese version of that same book.
And
right here.
It looks fab. It looks really chic. It looks, this is gold embossing and it's in Japanese, but it's just, as a book buyer and a book reader, I can say that if I saw this book on the stand, I'd buy it. It's so inviting.
And thank you.
I read the book, The Rule of Five, the E5 movement. So fantastic. Tell me a bit about, we talked about it when the book came out. But it's always good to refresh on lessons of leadership. What is the E5 movement? What is the Rule of Five?
Well, first of all, the E5 movement was born during my time in India, the whole concept, right? And it was really as I was leading the transformation of Randstad India. And this was something I'd had in my head for a long time. I was studying at London Business School on a transformative leadership program. And the professor asked me, Paul, what does an exceptional leader look like? What is exceptional leadership? And it's a great question to ask, by the way, to your own leaders or people around you. And so I explained my thoughts about leadership. And after about 3 minutes, he stopped me. He said, all right, hang on. Paul, you need to write a book. And that was the first trigger. And then fast forward, I was back in Japan over a Christmas holiday, and I met our common friend, who you know well, Ken Honda, the best-selling author in Japan, who you hosted here in India. And over dinner, we were chatting about my experience in India, and he said, Paul, you should write a book. And the ball started rolling. So I wrote the book. It's based on 5 E's of exceptional leadership. The first E is envision. So as Jim Rohn, the famous author, said, when the why is clear, the how is easy. So envision starts with why. And a lot of leaders get caught up in focusing on the how and the what and the when and how much and so on. And we really learned, I think, during COVID, the importance of purpose. So why? A compelling vision touches the hearts and the minds. Next, express, the second E. Take it out to the world. Walk out of the room, bring that compelling vision to the world. And how do you do that in this new world of work and how we communicate? It's the omni-channel. So we learn lessons from the e-commerce giants, for example, and how they communicate with their customers and catch the customers' hearts and minds. So that's express. The third one, if you get express right, the third E comes, excite. People start to lean in. They want to be part of this mission to bring the vision alive. And that's a moment of truth. That's a turning point. The wheels start to move. And then the fourth E, and I would say that's where I really am now in my own leadership journey, and I'm sure you can relate, Anurag, that's enable, enable. Enable is about creating an environment where every single member of the team can be the best true version of themselves, where they can shine, they can make a positive impact, and feel good about their work. Sometimes that means giving them the tools they need, supporting, push, pull, and sometimes actually means getting out of the way as a leader, not being there, giving them freedom to move. The final E, I think since the beginning of time until the end of time, execute. Bringing the vision to life for impact. So those are the 5 E's. And in the book, I share stories from my journey in India. Of course, in Japan, I talk about Jugaad, which I think is one of India's secret weapons. And I talk about Kaizen, which is something special in Japan. And one of my missions now in my consulting and advisory is to help companies leverage the power of Jugaad and Kaizen, bring those two together to grow their businesses.
And Paul, if I may ask, the transition from being the chairman and CEO of a large company, whereas you're absolutely in the comfort zone. Of course, you as a leader, you have to excel and get out of the comfort zone for growth. But how's been the transition from being a chairman CEO of an established company to starting from scratch and building something?
It's a whole bunch of emotions. On January 31st this year, I went to bed and I was the CEO of a $1.5 billion business, very profitable, the number one performing country in the world of Randstad on many metrics. Engagement was high, attrition was low. It was a really good place to be. And then on February 1st, I woke up and I had graduated. It was just me. The first surprise or moment of truth was when I opened my laptop and I looked at my calendar and it was pure white. When is the last time you've had a pure white calendar? That's a wonderful opportunity to kind of reinvent and recreate and restart the way you spend your time. So that was exciting. Of course, a bunch of emotions, excitement, a bit of apprehension, adrenaline was rushing. And then I started to realize now I have to do everything by myself. And it's about being self-reliant, independent. It's about waking up every day and making a conscious decision on how you're going to spend your time. I have to say, I really enjoy it. It's freedom. Of course, the corporate role comes with a lot of benefits. Not only financial, but also, the protected environment and the levels of support that you have. But I've always kind of had that backpacker mentality. I arrived in Japan 34 years ago with a backpack and my life savings and slept on a park bench. I think somewhere deep inside me, I'm still that explorer. So I have to say, I'm really enjoying, and the universe is bringing interesting things to me, opportunities as well. One thing I did learn, though, Anurag, is when I was CEO, I would say in the world of martial arts, and I studied karate in Japan, and in the martial arts, when you reach a certain level, you get a black belt. That means you're a teacher, a sensei, right? You're black belt. So I was a black belt as a CEO. But when I woke up that morning, February 1st, I took off the black belt and I put on the very first belt you get, the white belt. So in a way, I'm a white belt starting fresh again with the beginner's mind, and I'm enjoying every moment.
I'm sure, Paul, like in martial arts, you got from a white belt to a black belt. I'm sure in entrepreneurship also, you will get from a white belt to a black belt very soon. I am no doubt with the level of empathy and good intent that you have. I think everything else will follow. Let me ask you, we had the last conversation during COVID, immediately after COVID.
Right.
What has stayed as a learning from COVID and carried forward? What has stayed as a practice from COVID and stayed forward? And what has not changed?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. I think we learned some extremely valuable lessons during COVID. I think we all learned as leaders, whether you're an entrepreneur or leading a large organization, that we need to move results and outcomes to the end because they are outcomes, and move people to the front. So that was one key discovery. And when I sit with leaders, all types and shapes and sizes, leading in different arenas, whether it's business, sports, politics, everyone seems to agree that COVID was a wake-up call in many ways. The way we work, the way we lead. So certainly people first, creating an environment where people can shine. That is ultimately, the deliverable of the leader. Also making people feel safe. That was a learning. Nowhere in the textbook or in the job description did it say that a leader's role is to keep people safe. But we all realize the importance of keeping our people safe. So I continue to carry that with me in good times and bad.
And you in the past talked about emotional safety.
Yeah, emotional safety, psychological safety, physical safety, all of these things become part of the mission of the leader. What has not changed is in every business, whether you manufacture a product or you deliver a service, it's still about people. And I really believe that's going to be something that's timeless and borderless. Long after you and I are gone, this will be a key rule, I think, of effective leadership. So, we all built some muscles as a result of that tough time. I think we all got more resilient. We got more creative. Some of us reinvented ourselves, as you and I have talked about before, how you really reinvented the way you provide your services and product. I think all of us needed to be creative and show some agility. So we put on some new muscles. I think we're better ready for the future. But that doesn't mean we can rest on where we are. We have to constantly be building those muscles for the day after tomorrow. And that's part of what I'm doing in my consulting. Leadership coaching, leadership facilitation, using my book to help leadership teams build those muscles for the day after tomorrow.
Thank you, Paul. And one of the constant themes in my interaction with you has been the role of technology in business. Today, when we are conversing in the last 2 years, generative AI has really changed the way, and it's changing the way we work. There is a version 4 that has come out.
Yeah.
How do you see the role of AI in the era of empathy?
Isn't it interesting that we've all embraced AI, and that's a good thing. I think it's actually, when ChatGPT first came out, we were all playing with it and asking it funny questions, and it was giving us interesting answers. It's extremely useful. But I'm going to take it back to what I said earlier. I really strongly believe that A is artificial. So let's not forget that humans are real, technology is artificial. And although AI can learn and it gets smarter, and the new version will be smarter, we know that, it continues to improve, there are certain things that I believe AI can't replace when it comes to humans. The element of care, empathy, compassion, emotion. So I believe that technology is a wonderful thing. AI, absolutely, we should embrace it. We should leverage it in order to show the human side. So let's look at it like this. Tech for touch. Leveraging technology to give better touch. Use technology as our ally, as an asset, maybe even as a weapon in order to give better touch. And so whether you're in the service industry, again, if you're manufacturing products, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, there has to be an element of touch. AI can't replace that human element.
Thank you, Paul. Paul, because of your relationship with Japan, you having worked in Japan, you have a Japanese wife, you're the best person to be able to comment on where is India-Japan relationship going. You worked in India, you love India, you were successful in growing your business in India, you did the same in Japan. What is the future of Indo-Japan business relationships?
So now that I'm sitting in Tokyo, looking at India from Japan, it's really interesting. So if I rewind back to 2017 to 21, I remember when I first told friends in Japan and colleagues that I was going to India. People were curious, but also a bit hesitant. India at that moment was really on the cusp of big change. And what happened during my time in India, the pace of change was absolutely remarkable. It continues to this day. When I returned to Japan, what I was really surprised to see, when you turn on the TV in Japan, when you pick up the newspaper and magazines and so on, the conversation about India is front and center. More and more discussions are happening about India not only as an interesting place culturally and historically, but also as a place to do business. I was at an event just recently, and it was attended by Prime Minister Kishida, Jai Shankar, who came from India, several senior government officials from India, and senior executives on a mission. On the Japan side, we had the CEO of Suntory, the beverage maker, Ninami-san. And Ninami-san is also the chairman of the Japan Association of Corporate Directors, which I'm a member of. And it was basically a summit between India and Japan. And there were commitments at the table in that summit to invest in Japan from India, and from Japan to invest in India. So I think what you're going to see is a lot more evidence of this relationship getting stronger. Of course, economically, we're going to see more and more of an impact. And, having operated and lived and worked and led in these two cultures, I see a lot of synergy, Anurag, between the two cultures. They're at different stages of the evolution. Demographically, Japan is at one extreme, aging society, declining birth rate. At the same time, they have this thing called Kaizen, right? Meticulous focus on quality and incremental improvement. Then you have India, increasingly younger, growing fast. The pace of change is amazing. Innovation, of course, Jugad. So taking Jugad and Kaizen and bringing those two together is an amazing opportunity. I think you're going to hear more and more about Japan and India moving forward.
Well, thank you, Paul. I have to ask you this question. I sometimes feel that people are becoming more about themselves, which is okay. You have to be selfish, look after yourself, do self-care, focus on your own goals. What are the things that you don't like about the environment? Environment as in the way we operate, the way we work. And what are the things that you like a lot? There's always a silver cloud.
Yeah. I mean, we're in such a new world now, Anurag. Even this time I came back to India. Of course, when I arrived, I felt like I was home in many ways. Some things don't change. The Delhi Symphony Orchestra, I call that the horns, the horns beeping. That's the Delhi Symphony Orchestra of the sounds.
I don't like it at all.
Well, I'll tell you what.
I discourage my driver to honk.
I'll tell you what, when I arrived back in Tokyo, this was really interesting. And my wife and my son as well, we noticed it immediately. When we arrived and we hit the ground and we were in Tokyo, something was immediately different and we couldn't figure out what it was. And it was the silence. Because you almost never hear a horn beeping in Japan. And I'll tell you, I missed it. I missed that energy, that noise of India.
India is about energy.
There's no energy. There's energy. But I get you about the horns. One thing that I think that we need to rethink, a lot of organizations have changed their view on the office and the way we work. And this is a really tricky topic. I thrived as a leader being with people. So I think an organization is like a community. In order for a community to thrive, people need to interact. And how do you interact? You be together. This idea of hybrid working, while it is convenient and it's good for, let's say, the lifestyle angle, from a relationship standpoint, from a cultural standpoint within the company, innovation, experimentation, celebration, all those things that we love, it's tough to do in a hybrid world. I would really like to bring back the world where we're together more. It doesn't have to be every day.
I agree with you. I think, especially in collaborative work, there is more empathy when you are face to face. For the time you spend, you get much more out. And, it is more productive.
Absolutely.
And it is better. It is easy on you. Forget productivity for a moment. It's easy on a person when you talk to face.
Over a cup of tea or chai or coffee, whatever, having lunch, when you break bread with someone, ideas are born, relationships are built. And I love the process of whiteboarding, where you're standing in a room together around a whiteboard and brainstorming, let's try this, or how about we do this? That it's like ping pong, playing ping pong, table tennis of ideas. I really enjoy that, and I think we need to do more of that. But here's the good news. The reason I'm here this time on this trip is exactly that. There are organizations in India that are hungry to do more of this in-person, let's say, interaction. And so I'm actually leading an offsite for a large global company in Hyderabad next week. And we're going to be doing that around my book, The 5 E's. We're going to be talking about transformative leadership and so on. We're going to help this leadership team build muscles for the day after tomorrow. But we're doing it together in person. And what I'm seeing is the kind of rebound back to that. A lot of organizations are looking for that. So I hope to be back and forth to India often.
Thank you, Paul. My last question. you're an entrepreneur, you're a corporate executive, you're a father, you have two grown-up boys, you're a husband, you have a family back home in Canada. And I know your evolution and how you've grown in whatever you've done with absolute integrity and fully in it, If I may say, Paul 2.0, in the next 12, 15 months, what does Paul 2.0 hope to achieve when I talk to you next year when you're in India, or even before that in 6 months? What would have Paul achieved? What is there a bucket list you have?
Yeah, it's an interesting one because as an entrepreneur, and I'm sure I'd love to ask you that question maybe in another session to hear your big goal or pie in the sky. But I have to say, what I'm doing right now is exactly what I was envisioning before I set out on this journey. So last year, when I made the conscious decision to jump off the corporate bus and go into this new world, remove the black belt, put on the white belt, I drew a picture of a pie. And I said, what would be the ideal way to spend my time? And those pieces we talked about, a non-exec director role on a Japanese listed company, writing books, keynote speaking, leadership facilitation, offsites, and so on. India and Japan, M&A discussions as well, advisory, spending time with family, mental health, physical health, and a question mark. I put one piece of the pie as a question mark. What's that question mark? That thing that might come that I can't even imagine. So probably in 12 to 15 months, or maybe even sooner, I'm going to fill in that blank. Something will come. So when we talk again next time,
enjoying and progressing, it's all
absolutely,
fun.
Absolutely. And I'm guided by a mantra which I've shared with you in the past, and I know you also share this mission, which is to do well and do good. We do well, we be the best version of ourselves, we do our best in our roles that we play, but also important to do good for the world. So I'm also doing a lot of volunteering. I'm on the board of Hope International, a Canadian NPO, do a lot of work in Ethiopia and Cambodia and Philippines. And I'm also a volunteer in India, in Ladakh. And every January.
When is the next ice hockey match?
It's January. Every January, I make the journey to Ladakh with friends from around the world. And we hold the Indo-Canada Friendly Ice Hockey Tournament, playing with local teams in Ladakh, along with international players. We also volunteer in schools. We go to Sekmo with Sonam Wanchuk in the team. We're raising awareness on climate change and so on. So, I'm really aiming to bring that vision and that mission of do well, do good to life. And this is one way. So I am absolutely connected with India more than ever. I'm even counting the days to come back in January.
Thank you, Paul. All the best in your quest from going
sir.
from a white belt to a black belt in entrepreneurship and doing well and doing good, coming together to create something special. All the best.
Thank you.
From talking to you, I feel you feel very liberated. You feel very happy doing what you're doing. And once you're happy, everything else will fall into place.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Namaste. Thank you.